Irrational Radio.
Create something.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Table 13, brought to you by Irrational Radio. I am a wooden leg. Below me here is Shady Ankle Bottoms, Mr. E. And today we've got a special guest from our own server, Mr. Kyle West. How you doing tonight?
Oh man, I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Oh, couldn't ask for a better night, really. It's like, get nice weather, other than that,
I mean,
that's
all
about it.
indoors.
Right, yeah.
I mean, let's not
Yeah,
kid ourselves.
that's true. Like,
Oh,
really, what does
Weather
make
hasn't mattered in like
a
3 months.
long time? Yeah, that's true. Yep.
I
But
learned today that Eric wore a shirt as pants. So that
yeah,
was cool.
Well, you gotta tell people how.
yeah. Wow, Brett, that was you
That's
threw
fucked
him
up.
under the bus.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm sorry.
Start a new
Not
trend.
okay.
But I mean,
Right.
really though.
but really, shirt is pants. But that is not why we are here today. We are here to interview Mr. Kyle West about his DMing process, his world building strategies, and generally how he stays sane. Herding the cats that are role players sometimes. So I'll start it off. Yeah, Kyle, do you homebrew? Do you like to run modules? How would you describe your DM slash setting up for a campaign style?
Well, in recent years, most of my DMing experience has been in homebrew. I started with modules. I think everybody does. And while I have nothing against modules, I think they serve a purpose, and I think um, that you can run fantastic games in them. I learned early on, or I discovered early on that um, because of I have a history of creative writing, and that I got more out of the game by creating my own worlds, not because of any particular what's the word I'm looking for.
God
Uh,
complex.
No, not really because of a god. It's more because when it's something that I've created, then I know everything about it. Because when you're running a module, it's something that somebody else has written or multiple people have written. It shows it contains characters and places and ideas that are being presented to you to manipulate and play with on your own, but it's never fully yours. But with a homebrew, it is.
Right.
And so once I discovered that, once I started exploring that, I never looked the other way. I've always been homebrew after that.
What are some challenges that you have faced as a primarily homebrewing DM that you imagine that maybe module people don't have to deal with?
Well, it falls along the same line. With a module, you have a good bit of information already provided and prepared for you. If you if you want your players to go explore a dungeon, or if your players are itching for a dungeon or some combat centric places to go, then a module already has that laid out for you completely. It's already populated with monsters and entities and denizens that can get in the way and cause trouble and ruckus. Whereas in homebrew, you have to create all that yourself. I mean, you can pull from
Right.
other places. You can, as I think any DM worth their salt will lift and pull from things that they've been inspired by and mold it to their own. But with homebrew, that is all on you. So with
Right.
modules, that's one less step you have to worry about.
But it's still like that's the half the fun of homebrewing,
Oh,
is
absolutely.
coming up with those little details that the modules give you. It's so I think that we've got very similar processes, or like, I guess, philosophies in terms of homebrewing versus modules. So if you were going to sit down to begin a game, or like if in a brand new world, how would you start? What's your first steps?
Whew, a brand new world.
Yeah.
let's see.
Mhm.
uh, it's a good question because I've always only had the one.
Okay.
But a brand new world is something to get excited about and to play around with. Um, the first question I would ask myself is, what do I find fun? And now, obviously, the fun is a factor for all players at the table. But as the world builder and designer of the world, if you're not interested in what you're building, then it's going to reflect on it.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
so that's step one, something that I find interesting, something that I want to explore. And then from there, I look at what could I put into this world that the players would find interesting. What mysteries and intrigues and global tensions that I can throw in there that I can mention off the cuff. Where the players are sitting in a tavern and having a conversation, and they overhear a couple of old miners talking about something they discovered down in the gold mine that they can't explain, and that is causing trouble. And that gets your players' minds wandering and their imaginations going. And once you get, eh, I guess that's the step I take. Second is I don't, when it comes to world building, I don't flesh out everything. I don't have a tome of 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 dates and times and places and histories.
I feel attacked.
Well, that comes with time. Like with Elderon, it didn't start out the way it is now. It started out as a simple map with town names on it, and all these towns and places were completely blank slates. But as the world has grown, as more and more parties have been introduced to it, more campaigns have been run through it, then then the players I have had, the history of Elderon, the current version of Elderon is painted with the journeys and the adventures of the players in the past. They have helped build my world. And when they introduce ideas that I like or that I find interesting, clans or religions or really anything, then I'll slap it into the world, and then it's there to stay.
That's cool. So you kind of have a community, sort of a community aspect to your world building, in
Mhm.
which like you're not the sole author, but you're more like the editor in chief of what goes in and stays and
That's
what can't, like
that's
gets
a
kicked
really good
out.
way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's an excellent philosophy to follow. So when we interviewed Jeffrey Ingram of the World Anvil podcast, he pointed out that there's like a certain level of detail that you can't go into or that you shouldn't try to go into when homebrewing because you'll waste your time. You know, like you don't want to like write down the economic grain output of every type of legume in the
Right.
country for a
No,
3 month
feel
period.
attacked.
Yeah, right. Because your role players aren't going. They're going to take one look at that and see the numbers and be like, ah, yeah, they're not going to use as much as you've put into it. So,
Correct.
what are aspects of your world or world building that you see in general that you kind of slot into those categories?
Sure. Um, so when it comes to running campaigns or games in Elderon or in any world in general that I'm being put in charge of, the things that I focus on the most when I go to prepare a game isn't the social economic impacts of the various regions or things that are going on, unless it's relevant to the heroic journey that the players are going on. And I guess ultimately, if I had a thesis statement to my campaign running design, is I treat my games kind of like it sounds corny to say it, but like a cinematic experience. And by that I mean everyone comes to the table to have fun, but I think ultimately, and regardless of the type of game you play or characters you play, it's you're telling a story together, and you want it to be fun and engaging and exciting, and so those are the types of things that I focus on or I try to introduce for the players to engage with are things that they can go, wow, that was really cool, or just to make it a more engaging story. So when you're talking about the uh, the, the 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 types of crops that are being grown, that's a nice detail to add. But
Right.
like you said, your players they're not gonna remember that. They're gonna
Right.
remember the I don't know, the two guards that got into a fight, got drunk and got into a fight in the middle of the tavern because one of the players was flirting with them both, and they were trying to prove who was the better suitor. I don't know.
Right. No, I completely understand like the point that you're trying to make. It's not the it's certain kinds of fine details that stick out to players. And I think that you're right when you say it's like a cinematic experience in terms of like you have to kind of have a director's eye to figure what you can present that's going to get the attention of your role players and what you know they're going to safely ignore. And sometimes it's really hard to predict. You know, I've had people latch on to certain items of clothing that I was just thought of off the cuff, and then it turned out to be an important aspect of that character's personality.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's true too. There is a certain amount of improv that's involved as well. You can only prepare so much. So you create a character, an NPC that you want your players to interact with, and of course, the first thing they're going to ask 9 times out of 10 is, "Well, what does this? What does the NPC look like? Well,
Right.
describe them to us." And if you don't have that prepared ahead of time, you just make something up. I mean, it's not that hard to do, and yeah, I mean, there is a certain level of improv that's involved in it. You got to be able to, or at least I got to be able to quickly design and picture something in my head and then describe it to the players. And there's a good number of times where this completely made up uh, s- few sentences of information have become a focal point of this NPC, and I'm like, well, now I got to run with it. It's now
Right.
canon in the world.
Yep. Yep. That's
I
happened
don't
to
know
me
how many
a
times
huge number of times. Yeah.
I've put a dude into the story that's got just a ridiculous voice because I didn't want to do the same one I've done 3 times that session, and they're like, "That guy, he's
Oh,
special.
we're
He's
keeping
something."
him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
God, Bob and the Goblin. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Oh man. I think that's an interesting, I think, part of what I've found as somebody who's made characters for a couple of your games now. That yeah, it's there's a big part of the sort of back and forth between the player and the DM. It seems like it's not necessarily um yeah, you're not like dictating and waiting for them to react. It's sort of like, okay, they say what they're trying to do, and it seems like you're able to sort of tailor to that pretty flexibly, which that's been a lot of fun. Let me make silly bugbears that sell overalls or whatever.
Well, and that's something I learned over time as I honed my skills as a DM. I mean, nobody starts off perfect. Um, I would argue nobody starts off great or even good.
Yeah.
It's it's something that you tailor your skills to the players that you have, and then you hone the players. You seek the players out that fit that mold of your that you've molded your skills into, so that they mesh well together. I mean, case in point, when I first started out, I've had players that just would come to me with crazy ideas, as far as like, yeah, I've had some crazy. I mean, I'm talking about these were like someone wanted to come to the game playing an alien one time from outer space. I'm like, this is a fantasy game. What are you? um,
Why? Yeah.
yeah, you seek the players you want, and you build your skills around that, and it's ultimately a communal experience where you play off each other, and you just go from there.
I love that you have that community aspect to your world building and to your storytelling because that's I think a really important aspect. And yes, I do remember Bubbles the Goblin. He was a wonderful friend, and the exact kind of thing that I'm talking about in terms of like, you never know when your characters are going to adopt an NPC like that, or adopt, some aspect of your world, or like with DOP and the food cart. I had no idea that that's the way you were going to go, but you latched onto the fact that I was constantly describing food in the areas that we were in, and that like worked its way into the nature of the campaign. And so you have to be open to what your players want to do in that kind of respect, what they want to latch onto, because otherwise you're going to railroad them, and in a worse way than like, okay, we're going to hurry it up and like we're going to skip a few days so that we can get to this point. That's in kind of a railroading aspect too. But it's worse if you're like, no, this MacGuffin is important. Stop caring about the soup kitchen that you want to run. Like, no, or we have to go find the king's killer or something. And so that's I applaud your philosophy of DMing in that respect. You two, Brent, Eric, you've been very quiet. What you've been players in Kyle's campaigns before, which is something that we haven't. We've done a few interviews for this program, but this is the first time that we've been interviewing a DM that we've actually have experience in. What are your thoughts on Kyle as a DM? He's in the hot seat here, so you can
lay it on me, baby.
lay it on him.
Basically hate him,
Right? Yeah, that's what we need. Yeah, let's get some drama in here.
I think my thought. I'm gonna give you some compliments. The immersion and sort of like intro sequences you produce are really well thought out, well written. And your character, you've got a lot of different voices, and your characters are very immersive. That's something that Kyron's voices are all silly because Kyron's a silly voice boy. But yours are like, I'm in Middle Earth, or I'm talking to a dwarf, or like this is definitely a beach elf or something.
That's a heavy compliment.
The beach elves.
Yeah, beach elves are the best. But I've had a lot of fun playing in Kyle's games, and it's there's a lot of things that he does really well, that maybe he does better than Kyron, and there's things that Kyron maybe does better than him. But the important thing is they each bring something kind of special to the table, and I think that's something that a lot of times with these interviews with DMs, especially as we move on and hit other people that are in our server that we run games with, they all bring something different to the table. And yeah, there's my impression of you, or my impression,
Yeah.
From
Yes.
you. Words are hard.
Impression of, I guess that would be like impersonation if it was impression of. But anyway, like I don't have a Kyle voice. I can't do that. But no, I was gonna say a lot of the same things. Is that it's been entertaining trying tying characters that start from usually like a joke, and connecting them into a your very well established world that that you've been working on for an extended period of time, it seems like, which is another thing that you notice in the game. It's clear that there's been that the world kind of feels lived in. And sorry, there's silly things in the Discord chat. But God, that's a fucking artifact, dude.
Right? Yep.
Jesus,
Kyron's
it's the
obviously
AOL
having internet
login
problems.
three fucking.
His voice is chopping all over the place, and so we're.
I haven't seen that fucking Jesus, the AOL with the running guy and stuff. Oh, there's a subset of the population that's old enough to watch this that has no fucking clue what we're talking about. How weird is that? Okay, so anyway, but yeah, no, Kyle's great DM, and I think as I was kind of mentioning earlier too, it's the ability to tie in with whatever you come up with is one of the very fun parts. Is that I can do whatever, and you facilitate a sort of story, like immersion kind of thing. Like everybody's got their area where something that's important that's kind of in their wheelhouse tends to happen in most of the sessions. It seemed like too, where
Yeah.
there's kind of a room for people to shine and stuff, and that's an important thing I think for a lot of DMs too. So that's good on you.
Well, that's something I started working on relatively late in my DMing uh, career. Is I learned, or I've come to realize that no matter if you whatever, as long as the player is at least halfway taking the character creation process seriously. I don't ever ask for 100% serious. I mean, ultimately, it's a game, and we're here to have fun. But as long as the player is willing to work with me, um, it every character, regardless of how how crazy the concept is, or how foreign they might be to the world at large, every character has a story to tell, and has a journey, or you can make any character exciting if you put the work into it. And so
Absolutely.
that's something I try to focus on, or at least provide to the players, is that option, because that's the thing that I enjoy most out of DMing, is taking these character concepts that have come from, could be from seemingly nowhere, just made up out of the blue, or maybe something they've been working on for a while, and then letting the player explore the story of that character.
Yeah.
That's what I get my bread and butter out of.
Very cool.
I agree. That's a DM after my own heart. I'm very excited to someday be in a campaign with you as a DM. We'll get there
So
eventually.
close, so
So
close.
it was close. It was close. Like two boats passing in the night or whatever.
Eh.
You know. Yep.
Is that an actual phrase?
Yeah,
Ships in the night.
Ships in the night,
Oh,
but yes.
close enough.
You know, I
Two
Chironed it
fishing
a little
boats
bit. Yeah, two
passing in the
rafts passing in the gravel ditch.
I've heard of that.
I actually have a question for you, Kyle.
Sure.
Now that I've got you in this spot, I'm
Ooh.
gonna learn your secrets.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of interested in what goes into planning, because Kyron kind of brought up like planning out a new campaign, a new world.
Mhm.
I'm more interested to know what goes into planning out a new session.
Okay.
How like I know when I prep sessions, and this isn't about me, but I know when I prep sessions, I prep like blocks of sessions, right? I
Mhm.
make like a whole thing. I make an arc, a mini arc, and do that sort of thing. I'm interested to know how you do it, and sort of, do you go by session? Do you do several things? How in depth do you go
Okay.
with your prepping? That sort of thing.
So that is an excellent question. It's the process that's being discovered. That has helped me with my session preparation. And to answer that question, it's a little bit of both. And by that I mean, uh, once I have a campaign started, or at least in the phase of it's either going to happen or has already happened, I have I have a calendar, uh, and on for my Elderon, which it's actually pretty surprising that we haven't really talked about the days and the months and the lunar cycles, because there's a whole lot of that behind the scenes that doesn't really get brought up. But on this calendar, I have, once I start a new campaign, is the first thing I do is I create what I think is an interesting global tension, uh, for the world at large, that if the players choose to interact with, could potentially last the entire campaign, or at least a significant arc of the campaign. Um, Case in point, and this isn't really spoiling anything for Gods of Ether, it started off with the death of the emperor of the Aurelian Empire. I mean, this was something that kind of set the players in motion, and that was a global tension. It was a radical change to a significant power in the world, that the players were then dealing with the ramifications of it. And whether they chose to engage with it or not, which You guys chose not to a a good bit of the time. Um, it's there, and when I do this on this calendar, I plan out at least some significant events that will occur if the players choose not to engage with it. So if if this event happens and then the players aren't around for that or don't engage with it or choose to ignore it, then within the next week or 2 weeks or months down the line, because the players did not choose to act or to engage with it, then it's going to move on to the next stage of that event. Um, and those are the global things behind the scenes. Those are my world movers. On a more localized scale, with the characters themselves, things that I know the players are actually going to interact with. It depends on where they are currently in the game, in the world at large. If I know the players are going be going to a town in the next session or a large city, then I'll plan out interesting encounters or places or individuals that they might uh, interact with if they choose to seek them out while in that particular area. At the same time, I'll try to come up with interesting landmarks or features of the city or place that they're in that serve no purpose to the story other than to give description, to give immersion. And outside of that, the last thing I do is I try to come up with at least two, but typically three uh, pathways that I think the players might potentially go down, given what they've already have traveled and uh, participated in, based off of their what they've shown interest in, and what they have expressed to me what they want to do in the future. So when they go to the town, I kind of already have a name, or for the next session, I already have an idea what it is the players want to accomplish, and then I have in my mind the things that I want to accomplish as far as the story goes. If there's something important or an important story beat that I am hoping to get across in that session, try to figure out how to tie that into the things and events that the players want to engage with. So, for example, in the latest session of Legends of Eldaron, which played today, we had today, there is a significant world event that is going on that the players were not engaged with at all. But I made sure as they were progressing through their session that I kind of gave hints towards it. Yeah, there's this other thing going on. You don't know what it is. You can choose to go check it out if you want to, but just letting you know this is what's happening. Stuff like that.
Right. So do you
Interesting.
those things that you sort of put down, those little seeds you sort of plant? How in depth do you plan those, or do you just kind of put those out there and then sort of wait until they start to interact with it and then build it? Because otherwise, you're going to build a whole lot of adventures that people are never going to touch, right?
Well, yes and no. It depends. I don't go too in depth with it. It's in in the case of the more global world tension things. I come up because the goal of every campaign, I think, every DM, every player who sits down at the table, they want to see a completed story from beginning to end, their journey from zero to hero. And so, with these major global pushers, what I'll do is I'll come up with um, different um, what's the word I'm looking for, levels of uh, of tension, as this tension builds, as these events take place, if the players don't engage with them. So there could be some a cult. I don't know. I'm making things up. A cult that's trying to resurrect a dead god, right? And I'll have in I'll come up I'll decide early on how long it would take them to do that without any interference whatsoever. So there's a specific date that they have to do it on, or there's specific items that they need that they don't have yet. or a specific place I have to go, and then from there I'll determine how long, what's a reasonable amount of time it would take them to go from this point to this point, and then from there, and I'll focus on that first part, and from there I'll build adventures and encounters around that that tie into that if the players choose to engage with it. So
Okay.
there might you might go to a town that has some of that cult influence in it. You might run into one or two of them on your on the road or something, and maybe just the players at this point learn about the cult. They don't necessarily know what they're doing, but they know they're they're suspicious, and they're up to no good. But unless the players choose to then go at that point, then that little story beat continues on to the next one until it gets to the point where either the players go, "Yeah, we need to get involved," or
Right.
it's too late. They've gotten pretty far along, and now you have to deal with the ramifications of that.
Consequences. Oh
Yeah.
no. Well, cool. Yeah.
That's an yeah, that's a I think that's a similar bent to how I try to go down. I do generally like to build like hooks or, you know, seeds kind of thing, you know, like you're talking about, that you can kind of toss into a session and see if the party will bite on. But then, you know, yeah, you sort of, if they don't, you want to develop them in the background, and then make it something that's now important enough that it's either altering the way that they're interacting with the things that they are interested in a way that, you know, draws them over to it, or, you know, like you were saying, or they go and directly deal with it as a result. I think that's like a good tool to uh use, like those, the bigger pushers like you're talking about, is sort of like global tensions or national, you know, big regional tensions stuff, um to use that, and then actually engage the players in it without it feeling like you're playing a module or something,
Yeah.
where it's like, no, we got to go to the next thing or whatever, like, as a fun way to go about it, I think.
And it definitely compartmentalizes it in a way that makes it not a giant mess, right?
Mhm.
It sounds like it's something where you kind of just you only got to write a few sentences about it.
Right.
You know, thing is happening. You know, and then if they choose not to interact with it, then a month later, more things are happening,
Yeah.
and you
Oh.
just got like a little paragraph of like, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is what's happened in the background, and here's where we are now.
And then like an if then, you know, set of conditions where, like, if they do this, then it'll cause this response. If they do
Right.
you know, like, if their choice is to do nothing, then they do this. If they get involved in some way, the response will be from this group. You know, you don't need super specifics, I don't think. Yeah, again,
Yeah.
not
Well,
about me, it's about
and,
Kyle. Yeah.
and to follow up on that, and you're right. You're both right. The things that the players don't interact with immediately don't require a whole lot of detail when you're trying to figure out what the ramifications of them not getting involved in, right? The next logical step in that sequence or that particular storyline doesn't need a whole lot of detail. And to contrast that, the ones that the stuff that gets the most detail out of me is what I know for a fact the players will be engaging with in that session. If I could have uh uh this cult resurrecting a dead god on the same day that the players are going down into an abandoned mine to rescue a 6-year-old kid who got lost down there, then more detail is going to be put on that particular uh, quest line there, where what does the kid look like? Who are his parents? Why did he go down there to begin with? What's down there that's keeping him from coming out? What kind of dangers are inside the mine that the players have to deal with in order to save this child? So that's where a lot of my detail goes into when I'm creating sessions. It's not in the big global things. It's only on what I know the players are going to directly engage with.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to stay like, a step ahead, maybe two, but you don't want to worry about 3 steps, 4 steps ahead of
Right.
them because that may as well, you might end
Yeah.
up pitching that. You don't know if it's going to show up.
Oh,
or
you
not. That
will
makes sense.
end up pitching at least a small part of it. I've never been
Right,
able to
yeah.
predict more than 2 sessions out, maybe
Oh
even.
yeah.
Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is how the session's going to go," and then they don't let you skip 3 hours of time, and you end up role playing with each one of them individually.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't really tell all the
That's a
time,
shout out.
but yeah, it is. It
Shout
is.
out to our last fucking Dragons Parallel.
Yep.
Jesus. We literally said we were going to skip the rest of the day, and then
And
we
then-
proceeded to not do that at all.
Yep.
Well, you just brought up the riveting event of, Jeffrey looking for his shoes. So there's no way to ignore that.
Right. But that's
Like-
exactly, I think that's what Kyle's kind of trying to point out here,
Right.
is that, yeah, you need to kind of have an idea of the overarching, like, theme of the session, but then you need to be open to your role players just doing whatever they want to and attaching themselves to whatever they want to, because otherwise you're going to end up pitching notes or,
making people not enjoy the game as much.
Right, yeah, exactly. You end up railroading. So speaking of like railroading or bad DM things, would you say you've been a player or a DM more in your history?
Oh, definitely a DM.
So as a long-term DM, what are some suggestions to maybe some players, long-term players that are listening, that you think is a good thing to keep in mind for interacting with DMs in general,
Or
or
at
what?
least what you look for in an ideal player.
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like
Or
that.
on the other side, like, what are some don't name names or anything like that, but like, what are some
Right.
some people?
me.
Yeah,
Don't name
yeah,
me.
don't name him. But yeah,
You
like,
can name me.
well, like role playing, like traits that are disruptive to your DM style, or that don't really mesh. Either the positive or the negative.
Okay, I'll try to go down both roads here. I'll start with the negative things that I try to avoid, and I will say I've been pretty successful here in recent years of not having to deal with these negative traits. More because I have a very selective process when it comes to choosing my players now. Instead of it used to be, and there's nothing wrong with you know throwing up an advertisement and grabbing the first 4 people that sign up. You can do that. It's just that I have tailored my list of expectations for players, that so now I know the types of players that I'm looking for, and if I can't get a full, what I would consider a full group of players that fit along those lines, then I'll either wait until I do or not play at all. It
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's better to just wait until you have a good selection of players than to deal with the problems that might arise from having issues with players. That
Right.
said, some of the things in the past that I've had to deal with, or at least uh, that I've encountered, the one I've seen the most frequently is uh, the unrealistic expectations of a player coming into a game, that their character is already this worldwide proven hero of legend. It's like, well, you're only level 1 or 2. You're not some amazing world bounding uh, hero capable of all these great feats. You've barely got 10 health points. Let's
Right.
let's be a little more realistic here.
Come
Like,
on.
you're tougher than like anybody in your town, but
Right.
that's about where it stops, kind of thing. Like,
And
that's
I
funny.
mean, I've had players in the past come at me with, and I've got nothing against having long, elaborate, well thought out character backstories. I don't require it. I don't ask for anything more than a paragraph. But I've had players come to me with this detailed history about how their character did this and did that, and then they did this, and yeah, but again, you're only level 1 or level 3. Let's tone it down a little bit. So that's something that if I was making a recommendation to players, to I would get with your DM and understand uh the I don't know, the power level would, I guess, is a good way. The the experience that the DM expects your character to have coming into the campaign. Don't bring something in that exceeds that. On the other end of the spectrum, I suppose you could bring in something that doesn't meet it. You can always, I guess, you want to cripple yourself or say handicap. That's a little more easy to deal with. um, and as far as on the that's one of the major. I guess that's really the only major negative I've seen, or that, and um, maybe on top of that, character or players that um, m- feel or get the idea that their character is the main character
Oh yeah.
or the star of the show. I haven't seen that as much in recent years, but because it's something I try to shoot down pretty quickly, or at least not necessarily shoot down, but it's easy to quell that when you go, all right, well, you've been in the spotlight for a minute. Let's see what this guy's got to say. And as a DM,
Yeah.
it's your responsibility to kind of control that. So that's not as big of an issue, uh, but it is something that players should probably keep in mind, or at least be conscious about when they're sitting at the table. Now, on to the positive things. Uh, what I look for, what I like seeing from a player is one that when they come to the table, I'm not looking for actors. I'm not expecting you to be this classically trained actor who can lose. I'm not looking for Daniel Day Lewis. I'm not looking for a method actor. I'm not looking for someone who loses himself in the role. But what I do hope to get from a player is someone who, one, creates a character and not a class, not a race class combo.
Right.
Yeah, you could be a Sorkadin or whatever metagamed power level character you want to be, as long as it's a character and not this collection of stats and abilities. And if I get that's probably 9/10 of it right there. Um, on top of that, in addition to that, is someone who will engage with the world as it's presented to them. I'm not saying you know explore every avenue that I present to you, but it at least take the information provided and see where that in the ones that you're the part that what you're interested in, and see what paths that lead down. It's a give and take between DMs and players. If I'm sitting there describing a scene or a place or an NPC or an event that's happening, and the player goes, "Yeah, well, that's great, no, but I'm gonna walk over here and ignore that completely," then you're not giving me anything to work off of. And so, as long as there's that give and take, then we're gonna have a great time.
I think that's a good point. As a player, you're we are playing in a game where you have unlimited possibilities. I mean, virtually. But we're trying to collaboratively work to create something. Um, and so there is a lot of times where, as a player, um, it behooves you to sort of, because I think you're gonna have a better time if you try to engage with the content that has been curated and created for you, than to jump off and go kill a shopkeep and steal all of his
Right.
belongings or something.
Do something that
Um,
forces them into improv immediately,
Right.
right.
in the face of something that's clearly prepared.
Now, in that being said, obviously you want to be able to play your character and enjoy that being able to make those choices. So there is definitely a give and take there, where unique choices based off of what your character would be interested in doing or driven to do, um, and then comparatively making choices that further the plot or move the story forward. And we ran into that a lot with Dragons of Paralandia, where we would sit and argue about shit for like
Right.
an hour, and a lot of the podcast just became our characters fucking quabbling with each other. Is that a word, quabbling?
Yeah.
It is now.
Quibbling.
Quibbling?
But,
Okay,
know,
good enough. I mean,
Quaffling.
that's
squabbling or
perfect.
quibbling. I think
Squabbling.
one or
I
the other.
mixed the
Yeah.
two. That's no, quabbling is now a legitimate
All
word.
right.
The we had to kind of sit down and be like, okay, well, we need to make some concessions to one another and find a way to move forward. And I think that's really helped that be a cohesive and a narrative story instead of us arguing about how
Right.
we're
Mhm.
going to steal a thing from somebody or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always dragons and Paralandia or whatever it is just fine the way it is. Damn it! Now.
But there is some truth to be had in that. As a DM, and it's something that I am conscious about when I'm running a game, because I know, and I'm just as bad as a player. I'm guilty of this myself, of the over analyzing and over planning.
Oh yeah.
It is very easy to sit down and with your four other, how many other players, and discuss every avenue and possibility of the decision you're about to make. And what I do as a DM, I'll let them explore their ideas. But once I start to see ideas start to repeat themselves,
Right.
start going through a cycle, that's when something's got to happen. That's all right. Well,
Mhm.
you guys, now we got to do something.
I think that like there's a bear with me here, but army ants, when they lose the lead trail, they will end up circling in a spiral because they'll follow the ants in front of them. It's like a pheromone trap, and they'll eventually walk themselves into death. And it's called it's called an army ant death spiral. And I think that you could draw the comparison to role players when they end up repeating themselves in plans, is that because of the way that like role playing kind of unfolds, and there is no, like, you're not really debating over something that's right in front of you. It's all in the mind space, and so people kind of forget what had been discussed 15 minutes prior.
Mhm.
And now that they've got new information about, like, from the last 15 minutes, they're like, okay, and then they think about that thing that had been just discussed and they see it in a new light, and now they're like, oh, but we gotta remember about the guard at the door. And they're like, we just talked about that. We glue his shoes to the floor. And they're like, yeah, but now we're gonna have a problem with the glue. And it's just,
Mhm.
you wind up with role players getting into a death spiral when they're just like
I think
arguing with
a lot of
themselves.
that. I think a lot of that comes from a long history of DM versus player. And
Right.
I think when you're younger and you start playing games like this, that's what it is, because you're younger and it's your kids. And then you move up and sort of you become woke and um and then you still kind of in the back of your head you have this, like, if we do one thing wrong, the DM's going to pick that thing
Right.
and they're going to pull it out and make it the thing that's the death of us.
I feel
And
attacked. Oh, so
on top of
Mhm.
that, you've got 10 people, or not 10, but you got 4 people, you got 5 people, you got 8 people, you whatever, all with a different problem in their head trying
Right.
to solve it. It's like that game that's like keep talking and no one explodes, or whatever that is, where you got the bomb and it's like that.
What?
There's no. It's a game on Steam where
Is
it's like
it?
2
Okay.
people, and like one person's got like a manual to disarm a bomb, and the other person has the bomb. And
Yep.
like,
It's
trying-
great,
trying-
actually. It's really cool.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
it's pretty.
I would
I'm
it's really
lose.
great.
interested.
I would be not good at that game.
But it's like you've got 5 different people arguing about 5 different things, and none of them have an actual objective. Like, this is
Yeah,
what
there
the
isn't like a
problem is.
right or wrong either
Right.
necessarily. Like,
And so there's a certain point where if your players can't do it, which some players can't because
they're
can't.
me.
Yeah.
the DM has to step in and be like, all right, guys, here's the deal.
Yeah.
You've
We're
been standing here for 2 hours.
Yep.
now.
we're moving
Cross
on
the
now.
bridge.
Yeah.
There's nothing
We're
on the bridge,
goddamn
guys. Just
going.
cross
Yep.
the bridge.
Just
Please.
please,
Walk across.
please, God.
Please fucking
Yes.
do it.
Well, there is some truth to that, and I think to build on top of that, I think like we said before, it is a game, and I think when it comes to some of those more important decision making processes, I think everyone approaches. I mean, I as a player, and I'm sure the rest of you as well, will try to approach these situations to achieve the most desirable and most ob objectively superior outcome. It's like, what can I do
Right.
to get the most out of this decision without using the most of my resources?
Right.
And which is it's a part of the game. It is a legitimate part of the game. And I think and to build off what you were saying earlier about the player versus DM aspect and how the DM will take the worst part of the decision and use it against them. I think that's bad. That's bad play on the DM's part. Uh, Building on that scenario, um, what I do when I have players that are now into a decision making process. For example, there is a building that they need to get inside of, and they don't know. The only information they have is what I provided to them. The doors here, there's windows here, the doors need to be locked. I've already when I presented this conundrum to the players, it is already a situation where I know what is on the inside. I know what dangers are in there, and I know the potential routes that the players could take. There may be more. But what I won't do is I won't adjust that. I won't that is already those
That's
things
what's
are
in the
already
room.
set in stone.
Yeah.
That's there. And if the players find a good way to get past it, then they do. I'm not gonna. It's not gonna go. It was 5 guards. Now it's 10 guards. That's not gonna
Right.
happen, right?
See, all right. So I will give a little bit of pushback here because I am a little attacked in terms of I will edit my rooms and things on the fly, but I do have a good reason for it, and it's a reason that you yourself, Kyle, have put forward. Is I treat my games like a cinematic experience, and I treat it like there always has to be some kind of conflict in each session. There always has to be some kind of resolving of the conflict, and a lot of times real life does not work out like that. You walk into the room and the guy shoots you in the head, and that's the end of your story. That just there's not a lot of cinematic value to that.
Right.
And so sometimes my role players will approach some situation that is either A, going to fail immediately and unsatisfactorily, like they're going to step on the pressure plate and their rocks are going to fall and they're all going to die, and they're all going to have to reboot characters, or they've figured out they've accidentally created a solution that is going to solve the room or the puzzle in a way that's trivial and not fun for either the DM or the players. Um, and it's not something that I do all the time, obviously, and I'm not going to say that it's something that I do particularly well or subtly either. I don't try to trick people. But I do wonder how you solve that kind of dichotomy between having everything set in stone and still allowing or still fostering the feeling of a cinematic experience.
Well, I actually have a good example for this. One of my earlier campaigns, I had the players were in a dungeon, and they got to a room, a trapped room, where a puzzle was needed to be solved in order to proceed forward. The details of the puzzle really aren't that important. It involves some coffins that need to be opened in the right order. But the tension to this room was that the room was beginning to fill up with water and quickly. So my idea going into it was that the players were going to have to rush and try to figure out, based on the clues that were provided, the correct order of the sequence in order to get the door open. And I thought that'd be some great tension until one of the characters, who I think was playing I think a warlock or a wizard, it might have been a sorcerer, I don't know, but it's like, yeah, you know what? Room filled with water. We got all the time in the world we need. Water breathing,
Yep.
right? I'm like, oh yeah, well, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So trivialize the puzzle, but I'm not gonna penalize the player for quick, clever thinking. I was like, all right, well, you got me on that one, right? So that's I guess that's a good example. Maybe I don't know.
I agree. I think yeah, I would say that my goal is like when I find those situations, like what I try to do is explain exactly what they've gotten around by even if it's stumbling into this solution, how showing what they've managed to accomplish even inadvertently by like, oh wow, the 5 people were behind the wall, catch on fire with that tapestry that you knocked
Right,
the
yeah.
candelabra over into. It's like, so you um yeah, and then I think it feels better sometimes if you're not catching your DM, like turning it into 10 guards every now and again. It feels better when you do get into that room and like it's a struggle, but you barely make it out and all that stuff. It feels more like you as a player are responsible for that, I think. Um, and then if it becomes really easy, like you're a hero. Sometimes stuff's supposed to be kind of easy, and you're supposed to make shit that looks really complicated and difficult seem effortless. So I think there's something to be said about that. Obviously, you can't have that happen all the time. It can't just be you blow on them and everybody falls over like dominoes or something. But I do think there's something to be said about they are the heroes. So if they cast on water breathing in your while the room's filling up with water, they get to look around and spend 10 minutes or whatever it is trying
Right.
to solve this puzzle. It's maybe not as tense as it was supposed to be, but that's part of the puzzle that they've solved, kind
Right.
of.
Yeah. Well, and to go a little bit further to what you were asking there, Kyron, there's a tactic that I do use, not all the time, but occasionally, when the nerve strikes me, is I have whenever I build an encounter or a challenging situation or a puzzle, and I feel if I want to over prepare for it, I'll include uh, 2 scenarios. One is one I call ratcheting up the tension and reducing the tension. So if the players get in there and this encounter that I thought was going to be challenging and engaging and interesting, and they come in there and all of a sudden, wow, the dice are really lucky and the
Right.
players are blowing through it. If I prepared for it in time, I'll have this the tension ratcheting thing where suddenly the a hidden panel on the wall opens up and this a troll jumps out or something, and the opposite is true. If they get in there and it is something that has become much harder or more difficult than I had anticipated, then I'll have events or triggers in place that make things a little easier. Case in point, and something that happened very recently with Gods of Ether. You guys had an encounter with some automatons that I could tell pretty early on into the encounter that you didn't want to have any engagement with them at all. It was something that you wanted to avoid at all costs. So suddenly there's a panel on the wall that, when
Right.
activated, shuts them down. You know
I
that
was
that
wondering.
yeah,
So I guess that's exactly the kind of thing that I was talking about. Like there's some
Yeah.
times where, because you're the DM, and
No,
it's
yeah.
my personal philosophy that, like, I'm the DM and I'm not even beholden to my own structure all the time, because I'm beholden to the enjoyment of my players, and if
right,
they're not having fun with a certain situation, or even like a certain like dynamic, even like within the group, I will do my best to adjust the session to compensate for that. Sometimes I'll have role
hmm
players that are in a really bad mood. They've, like, not from what's happened in the game, but like they're just outside life getting in, and so I'll have to, like, okay, well,
right,
they were gonna be the talky person this session, or I was gonna run this thing where they were the center, but now I got to do this other thing because they're not really, I can't put them on the spot like that. Or even you
right,
lose a role player, and you don't want to cancel the
Right.
session, so you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to make some adjustments to, like, and that's something that I've run into a lot. Like, if I lose a role player, suddenly all the encounters that I've developed are going to be a little harder than they would have been otherwise. So I will, like, oh crap, yeah, I forgot that they had missing a player. So one orc is going to just poof. So now it's a 3-on-3 instead of a 4-on-3. And I guess, like, where I get a lot of shit for is when it's obvious that I'm making it harder for the role players, but it's a little bit more it's harder to tell when you do it the other way, when you make it
Right.
easier for on the role players without them knowing it. And I suppose that kind of lends into your open communication theory, Eric, is that, if you tell them, hey, there were 4 orcs in this room, but we're missing, Steven, so now there's 3. And that's
I
just
tend toward that kind of stuff, but also I wasn't trying to imply that the DM does not have every right to say, oh, this was misbalanced and like
Right.
the 2 orcs run away. Like I absolutely try to
Right.
build my encounters in a way that allows them to be, the difficulty to kind of ratchet
Adjust
up or
it.
ratchet down
Yeah.
a little bit if I have time to build that in.
yeah.
But yeah, and if it's getting hairy, people run away and stuff like, or
Right.
they take some piece of shit that they were now looking for that's important all of a sudden, and they leave with that instead of just trying to kill everyone
Right.
Well,
in the
and
party or something.
that's one of the best tools that I found in the DM's toolbox is when you have an enemy run away. Players
Yeah.
can't stand that at all.
No. Yeah.
PCs can't take it.
No, not at all.
That's how you get
It
them to
opens up
chase.
for a
Like
whole
it's
slew of just bad things, right?
Yep.
He's gonna go get help.
Oh,
Get
good.
help.
We're
Right.
gonna see that NPC again in 6
gonna come
sessions. He's
back.
gonna hate
Oh,
us. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take a break. Brett,
oh.
I need you to screw up the spiel again.
All right. Happily. I
Good.
would love to do that. Thanks everybody for tuning into Table 13. This is just one of many Table 13s that happen every Thursday. We put out a bi-weekly podcast every other Friday, and it comes out on Monday before for our $5 and above patrons. So check out that Patreon link. But it's called Dragons of Paralandia. It's a real play podcast where we all play a bunch of goofy Dragonborn and goblins and stuff and stuff. There's dragons there too.
There are.
We do a bi-weekly stream every other Monday. It's Gods of Aether, and that is pretty cool too. Kyle actually runs that one.
He sure does.
So
I do.
tune in for that. I think it's coming this coming Monday.
With some surprises. I think in store.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there's some stuff going on. We've got a Discord that you can join. Below the thing here, there's a little button that says Discord. Click that, and you can join our community and hang out with us and be friends. We run games there. Other people run games there. We talk about literally everything there. So come over and hang out and be friends. Literally,
Please.
yes, we talk about so many things.
It's
if you like
I
what
don't
we're
think
doing
you
and you want to
screwed
help
that up.
support us monetarily, I mentioned Patreon earlier. That is also copied below or linked below. You can go there and give us money, and there's perks and
Yes.
stuff for that. And then Kyle, what are you doing? What's going on in your life?
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to push?
I do. You've already touched on Gods of Aether, which I highly recommend you check out if you get a chance.
I also
Especially,
recommend that.
yeah, we have
Devil recommended.
we have Eric and Brett in that as well. In addition to that, if you're part of the Discord, if you've had conversations with me, or we've talked about, if you find yourself interested in the campaign world that I run, I also run another stream, a DM in another stream that is every other Thursday, opposite of Gods of Aether. The week Gods of Aether is out, with another fantastic group of individuals, the Rolling Thunder D&D Twitch group. It's called Legend of Eldaron. Takes place in the same world at the same time as these knuckleheads in Gods of Aether, and so yeah, if you like what you see, if you're interested, or if you find it entertaining what I do, you want to check that out, and you want to see another fantastic group of players, I highly encourage you to go check it out.
Yes.
And that was today, right?
Yeah, we had an
It was
episode
this
today,
Thursday.
Okay, so it'll be two Thursdays. It'll be 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now.
The next one. Perfect. All right,
Awesome.
fellas.
All right.
Well, we'll be back in like 10 minutes for a whopping 10 minutes before we leave again. So,
as is tradition.
yeah.
All right, we'll
we
see
do
you
it.
then, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
As a captain of a ship, it is important to keep her in the best shape possible. But certain parts are harder to maintain than others. And with all the competing ship maintenance products in the world, how is a captain to choose? Well, sometimes it pays to be picky. That's why there's Picky's Poop Wax.
the only deck wax specifically designed for your ship's poop deck. Yes, when you wax your poop, nothing beats Picky's poop products. Available in a Coastal General store near you. And we're back here with Kyle West, talking
Hello.
about DMing styles, homebrewing, and the good and the bad and the ugly of role players and DMs alike. So we have been talking about, your personal style, Kyle, and as well like role players that you want to avoid, and the kinds of role players that you're really looking for. So for you as a player, I suppose, actually,
Think back.
yeah. Well, so let's go a different way. Systems that you've actually run in. Is it primarily 5e, or do you have experience with other role-playing systems?
I started with 5e. In fact, I really got into DMing when 5e came out.
Okay.
I started with I ran my very first game was Horde of the Dragon Queen, or I say game.
Nice.
I ran, I want to say like 3 or 4 sessions in it before everything fell through. But from there I moved on. I went to Pathfinder for a little bit.
Okay.
Mostly because when I first got into the hobby, comparing and contrasting the two systems without really knowing why fifth edition was the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Pathfinder, you go, "Oh my god, Pathfinder offers so much more flexibility and character options." So I went through that for a little bit, and was there for a good while, about 2 years. But I ran into the problem I ran into there, and it's nothing against the system, because you run into the same problem with other systems as well. But it's more prominent, I think, with Pathfinder and perhaps even with 3.5 because of that wide array of options. Is that you start getting players that are well versed in the
Yeah.
system, or want to exploit the system to maximize their characters. Which again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Looking at you, Brett.
Ouch.
But there's nothing, there's maximizing your character and still engaging with the role play and the world and having a character, and then there's maximizing your character because you want to be the one that does the most numbers,
Right.
do the
Right.
most damage.
I give Brett a lot of shit, but he definitely does a good job of role-playing his broken characters.
So I moved on from Pathfinder, migrated back to fifth edition. Fifth edition is now my home. It's where I go to if I've got nothing else and I need to run a game, or I feel the need to run a game. I can put together a one shot or a campaign in fifth edition without even having to look at a book anymore.
Right.
It's that ingrained in my brain. But outside of those two, I played around in the Cypher system with Numenera, which I highly recommend everyone try out if they're looking for something that's D&D like, but uh, m- more focused on story and character development and role play. Not saying that D&D isn't. The system was designed in that way. I played around a little bit with Star Wars: Edge of the Empire. Uh, every now and then, I have a little experience with Call of Cthulhu. Um, not really that great with it as a DM. It's I'm not really good with horror stuff that I
Okay.
got to build on. And then I think
I
the
feel you
last
there.
one.
That's hard for me.
Yeah, me too.
What else was there? There was one of what is it? Rune.
Escapes.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
RuneScape. I forget the name of it. Um, Rune something. But what I remember most about that system is it took a lot of if Pathfinder was a game system that you would consider in depth or involved with like tables and
The Rune
uh,
Wars?
no, it'll come to me.
Sorry.
Uh,
Go
but
ahead.
what I recall about it is like when you went to attack an enemy in that system, you not only did you declare your attack, but you declared what part of their body you were going to hit, like it was
Yeah.
the head or the arm or the fingers, and then you roll a percentage die to see if you even hit. It was ridiculous, but it was pretty fun. And then the age, fantasy age, I played around with that a little bit. So
Okay.
I've been over the place.
Yeah, you've been around the block a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I guess so 5e is your home. What about the system makes it more appealing than the other systems that you listed? Is it just your experience, or is there something about the way that the system is set up that appeals to you?
Combination of both, and the system itself, the way it's designed, it was designed to bring in the lesser common denominator,
Right.
the people who have never played D&D before, who heard about D&D or heard about role playing games, and they want to dip their toes into it and try it. Fifth edition is a great system to start with
Yeah.
because of how modular it is and how simplified is not the right term for it, but easy to understand, maybe uh,
Streamlined. Yeah.
streamlined, uh, to the point where you don't necessarily need to have a firm grasp of the rule set to be able to do or run a pretty successful game in it.
Yeah, or take part in
Um,
a pretty
or
successful
take
game.
part in a game in it. And I think because of that, uh, uh, as a DM, the thing, what I value out of a system nowadays as a DM is how easy it is for me to create the scenarios and the encounters and challenges for my players without having to put in a whole lot of work. And I think fifth edition provides that in spades.
Okay. Well, that's excellent reasons for it. Absolutely. Yeah, and just kind of going back to kind of the gateway role playing system aspect of it. For those who maybe be dipping their toe into 5e and finding the waters pleasant, do you suggest that they go check out Pathfinder 3.5 to really kind of? Because I guess that's what I'm trying to fish for. Because I would recommend if you enjoy 5th edition and you're like kind of ready to learn a little bit more rules, to check out 3.5 or Pathfinder, because it takes the same basic kind of mechanics of the 5e system and is way more expansive, though it's the other way around. Those systems came before 5e.
Right. Well, I definitely recommend that you get as much experience as you can in any system you can get your hand on. And if you find that you like it or like it more, fantastic. That's great. But the reason I would recommend you do that is so you can see the how many variations of the same kind of game and rules are out there. Not so
Yeah,
if only to appreciate what fifth edition brings to the table.
agreed. Agreed.
As somebody who grew up playing 3.5, I would say don't bother. It'll be cheaper to go for other things. There's so many damn books, and it is a very very crunchy system, and it's good. But yeah, I don't know. It's awesome. I love it. It was part of my life growing up, but you can. There are so many others that are awesome too.
Yeah.
That it's not worth going back for one that has a shelf of books to have the whole system in your head.
Yeah, it's incredibly in depth, and that's what, like a lot of pushback from the old school 3.5 crowd when 5e came out for that
Right.
reason. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the general move against, but I think that's kind of, yeah, we've talked about it before, but that's the general trend of role playing. I think it's, it's moved much more towards at least D&D, especially, like in and of itself, has moved more toward a like a story focused element and away from the combat mechanics as much. It's still, you look at the book, it's 90% combat mechanics, but
Yeah.
But
it's
they're simplified combat mechanics. It's
compare.
Right.
It's a relative move. That's the, yeah. I think it's important too. Yeah, it's like there are games like Monster of the Week or whatever that are, it's
Yeah,
there's
ugh.
dialogue moves and stuff like that where you're worried about where there's things that you can do other than just like I'm gonna make a persuade check
Right.
in social interactions and stuff like that. I think, but D&D has the framework to have more with the social interactions. Obviously, I'm a big fan, not just don't. There's no need to tap that well. If you haven't, if you've escaped it, stay away. Like you're good, stay out.
Don't do it.
The world doesn't need another rules line.
Exactly.
Oh man. Well, again, Kyle, thank you very much for coming and
Yeah.
giving us an interview, hanging out on the show.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that you want to say that you haven't gotten a chance to? We got like 8 minutes before we hit midnight.
Oh, well, I don't know if I can talk for 8 minutes.
Oh yeah, it'd be impossible
demand it.
for forever DM.
Well, I would encourage anyone who is watching or listening, either live or checking it out later on, if you've had the inkling or uh, the idea that maybe you would be interested in maybe trying your hand at DMing, but you don't know if you'll be good at it, or you don't know whether or not you can learn all the rules, or if you think it's too much of an undertaking. I would encourage you to do it regardless.
Yes.
The world needs more DMs. I need more DMs so I can play more. And it's not what can come off as a daunting task at first. It gets easier the more comfortable you get with it,
Oh yeah.
and that's only going to come with time and practice and patience. And I encourage everyone, especially if you like storytelling, especially if you like gaming, if you like hanging out with your buddies and making goofy jokes and engaging in shenanigans and incredible and sometimes heroic feats, then yeah, get into it, man.
Yes. It's quite the hobby. That
It
is
quite
for
the
sure.
hobby.
Oh yeah,
A very fulfilling hobby.
Yes.
definitely.
Oh man, so fulfilling.
It was only like 2 minutes. I'm disappointed.
Oh, he did good though. But it was
You failed me.
but it was like,
the
8
same.
minutes. Yeah, with it set within 2 minutes. Yeah, he's compacted them. compressed the words. That was
They're
great.
worth like 4 times as much because
Right.
they're packed so
Exactly.
much. That's good.
I got to download WinZip now. Again. Free
Seven.
installation
It's
right
way
now.
better. WinRAR?
You gotta
WinRAR.
pay for it. You gotta pay for it, man.
Nah, you don't. It's fine.
All right.
Um, So again, thanks, Kyle, for
Absolutely.
hanging out, for taking the time to talk to us and imparting us your wisdom, imparting upon us your wisdom. You're watching Table 13, and thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week when we talk about Traveler.
Yeah.
The space opera game. I got the book.
It's
probably backwards
super
because I
cool.
think the webcam.
No, you did it right.
No, yeah,
Did
it's
it?
perfect. Yeah.
Oh wait, does it mirror? Oh,
I
maybe
don't
it
know.
does.
Mirrors for me.
No.
But we're going to talk a little bit about Traveler, kind of just checking out another system. It's one I've been running a little bit and getting sort of into. There's one particular element that I love, and that's the character creation, and I think we're going to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So cool.
And kind of show off what it has to offer. We talk a lot about 5e and D&D in general, but there's so much more out there, and
Yeah.
and where D&D is great to bring people into the hobby. You don't want to run a space game in D&D because it's just not built for it.
Right.
There's conversions out there, but it's garbage compared to stuff that was built specifically for that purpose. And so we'll
It
talk a
showed
little
it
bit about
up
that.
right. It didn't
What?
reverse it.
Oh,
Nope. Yep.
it did show up right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it showed fine. Yeah.
Sweet, cool. So if you can read forward or backward or any direction, check in next week where I don't mirror the contents of the book.
Right.
Also,
Danger.
just another sweep around the old Brett fucking up the
Pitch
thing
wagon.
vine.
Right.
Check out our podcast. Comes out. We have 21 episodes out. Comes out every other Friday.
Yeah.
Come out next Friday.
No, Friday after.
Friday after.
Just
yeah,
wait.
Next.
No, hold on. Yeah, I
Friday
think it's
after.
not this one.
It's
The next
Friday
one.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're so
Um,
good at this.
join us for God's Vader on that coming Monday. This coming Monday and every other Monday. Yeah, not every single Monday, but every 2 Mondays.
Bi-Monday.
following that.
Bi-Monday-ly.
Semi-Monday.
No,
Semi-Mondaily. Ooh, I
twice
like
every
that.
Monday. I hate that. And check us out there. We have some stuff that's going on. So if you've watched it and you haven't watched it in a while, you should tune in next time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I
good.
think you should. And I'm not just saying that so you watch it, but I think you should.
I mean, that's
It's very important.
Other than that, come join our Discord. If you are a player looking to get in the game, or if you're a DM wanting to run something, we're always looking for people like that in the community. We're always looking for people that want to stream with us when we do our stuff. And if you want, whether you want to run a game or play in a game, come and join our Discord, hang out with us, and get in the game and try and.
Let's do it.
Tyron, stop it.
I'm just telling
You're
him. come
pushing
on.
people away with that.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
Otherwise, if you like what we're due, and you want to throw us some cash, go to patreon.com/rational radio. It's linked below as well, and you can throw us some chump change that we can you buy a coffee or something.
Yeah.
We all the money we make goes back into the products and stuff that we produce. So if you want to make it better and you want to have a part in that, check out our Patreon page. Other than that, check out Rolling Thunder D&D. Kyle runs a game there. It's called Legends of Eldaron, and it goes in British time every other Thursday, which is like 2 in the afternoon for us
Yeah,
Americans.
Central Time. It's
Yep.
2 in the afternoon.
All
Until
right.
next time,
Thanks, everybody.
stay
Wash
safe.
your hands.
Bye.
Love
Wash your
yourself.
hands. Yes. Stay safe.
Wear a fucking mask. That's it.
God damn it.
Wear a sweatshirt as pants.
Yes.
I hear it.
Okay. Fuck off. I don't know why y'all gotta come at me like this. This is bullshit.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See ya.